Hey everybody, welcome to Behind the Slate. As you can tell, there's no theme music for this week's episode. That's because this week is not really an episode. This is just going to be a little mailbag slash housekeeping kind of scheduling announcement. There's been a huge amount of new listeners that have found the show recently, which has just been amazing. And if you're one of those people, I am so glad that you are here. I'm so grateful for your support. I'm going to start here by reading an email that I got from somebody. This is from Dave. He writes, "New listener here. I found your show after your guest appearance on Archive Atlanta. Thank you so much. If you haven't checked that out, I do an episode of Archive Atlanta where I talk all about the history of Atlanta's lost cinemas and just general film history in Atlanta, which totally blew my mind. I knew nothing about it before I started researching it. Anyway, Dave continues, "I've loved catching up on the Van Peebles series. Can't wait for the next episode." Thank you, Dave. Thank you so much for your support. And I can't wait for that next episode either. Let me tell you, my life has been absolutely crazy this past month, both personally and professionally. There's been a lot of good things going on, but it has made it really hard to get the research done for this next episode of the Van Peebles series. I would have loved for it to have come out this week, but unfortunately, I'm just not there yet. When I look back on the last 3.5 months of doing this show, I don't know how I've kept up the release schedule that I have, because right now I literally feel like I'm drowning in the research. So going forward, I think that it's probably going to take me a little bit more time to get out the history shows. I would love to keep doing them every other week, but realistically, it's kind of impossible. I mean, in my life, I work, I'm a father of a 1-year-old, I'm a husband, and I'm a filmmaker myself. So I'm trying to get projects off the ground that way. So there's just a lot going on, and dedicating the amount of research to basically, kind of writing an audiobook every month and a half has just been really tough. And encountering this problem or this issue has really forced me to sort of look inward and be like, okay, well, what are my core principles about this show? And above all else, I believe in quality over quantity. I do not want to sacrifice at all when it comes to delivering the best possible storytelling that I can. I think that's ultimately why people listen. So I need to double down on that principle. I need to stick to the quality. And I don't want to be like churning out quote unquote content just for the sake of posting something. And I certainly don't want to sell the stories of these filmmakers short in any way, shape, or form. But this is still a really new project. I'm still throwing spaghetti against the wall and seeing what'll stick. And one of the things that's been really cool is that, doing this show has piqued my curiosity about not just film history, but, the trends and forces that surround these films, and also stuff that's going on in the contemporary world. And actually, I have another email here that kind of speaks to that. So Fiona writes, "I live in New Orleans and have gone to the theater twice after listening to your episode with Chris Escobar." Just amazing. Thank you so much for writing in and telling me that. So if you haven't listened, I interviewed Chris Escobar, who's the executive director of the Atlanta Film Society, which is the group that organizes the Atlanta Film Festival. And he also owns 2 historic theaters here in Atlanta. And he gives just incredible insight into sort of his business approach and his practices about operating a historic theater that shows both new movies and also older repertory films. He really kind of doubles down on like the importance of customer experience in coming to the theater, and gives a really sort of impassioned defense of why going to a theater is not going anywhere anytime soon. So if you haven't checked that out, listen to that. And Fiona continues here, "Can we get more of these interviews about modern preservation and how history is dealt with in the present?" I love that question. And the basic answer is yes. This show is evolving. I think it started with sort of like, okay, this is just going to be history. And that's really what I want to talk about. But the more I think about history, the more I'm like applying, what I'm thinking about and what I'm learning to the modern world, the more I get curious about the threads you can tie from history to the modern world. So this has really kind of evolved beyond just a cinema history show. This is a cinema extravaganza, a cinema appreciation show, a show about cinema's past, present, and future. Cinephiles, Cinnabon, if you want to sponsor us, please, I would be happy to accept some cash. Anyway, no, but seriously, this is the show is evolving, and I would love to continue to talk to people sort of about these preservation issues. And I would love to continue to talk to people about preservation and about modern film practices. And I kind of just want to follow whatever I find interesting and hopefully trust that, someone else will find it interesting too. Now, as far as the immediate future goes, I don't have any of that content planned, but I'm going to continue pursuing it. So going forward, realistically, the history shows will be a little more spaced out. I think Van Peebles Part 3, I'd like to get it done in 2 weeks. It might even be 3, but I've got some fantastic interviews. I'm going to be talking to some amazing guests about blaxploitation cinema and about the Black Power movement and its influence in art, which just I learned so much from this person. It's just totally incredible. So that'll be really fun. And then going forward, I basically have my next 4 filmmakers planned out, which might take us all the way through the end of 2023. Now, speaking of the future of 2023, in the fall, I'm going to be going into production on my own feature film. And this is going to be, hopefully, my first feature that I've ever completed. And so while I'm in production, I can just safely say historical research is not happening. That film, that project is going to demand my 100% artistic attention. However, I thought it would be cool to try to bring this podcast into that filmmaking process. Look, the title of the podcast is Behind the Slate. So we can go behind the slate of all these great directors, and we can go behind the slate of yours truly. Greatness, we'll see about that. That's TBD. But I would like to invite you into my filmmaking process, kind of share a step-by-step version of that story which will hopefully serve as sort of an oral history of a DIY filmmaker, struggling, as I no doubt will be, to drag a film across the finish line. Because as I'm sure many of you know, the fact that any film exists, the fact that any film is finished is kind of like a miracle. I mean, filmmaking is just so hard and it's just so difficult to do. And to read and learn about the people who do it really, really well and do it really, really well consistently and over again, it's inspiring and just baffling how anybody does this job. So I will be attempting to do that, and I will be bringing you guys along for the ride. So, look, I get that this is kind of an eclectic mix. I don't like how you look into the feed and see, Charlie Chaplin Part 5 and Melvin Van Peebles Part 1, and then there's all these other episodes in between. I want to keep it so that, if someone does just want to listen to the history stuff, that it will be easy to find within the RSS feed, and they can just listen to those shows. I want to make sure they know that if an interview, pertains to the subject matter, that's clearly demarcated, whereas if an interview is sort of just a one-off interview, with somebody who's really interesting, that they would have some idea of that as well. I'm still trying to figure all this out. If you guys have any ideas, if anyone has any ideas, please email me behindtheslatepod@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. I think that is it for today. I got to go get back to this Melvin Van Peebles script so that I can hopefully deliver it to you guys in an expedient fashion. But in the meantime, from the bottom of my heart, Thank you so much for all your support. Thank you for listening. Thank you for emailing. If you really want an episode today and you haven't checked out my guest appearance on Archive Atlanta, check out that show. You can just search Archive Atlanta in any of your podcasting apps, and it's about like 45, 50 minutes. And it talks about my home city's absolutely fascinating film history. Big revelation. The very first building ever built specifically to show motion pictures stood right here in Atlanta, Georgia. Not in Paris, France, not in New York City, Atlanta, freaking Georgia. So that was pretty mind-blowing to learn. And I think I kind of want to like try to get like a plaque built from, not me. I don't want to build it, but maybe the city should like really get on that. That would be awesome. Anyway, if you really want to keep listening to my voice, go check out that show. Otherwise, I will be back very soon. You can also always follow me on Instagram at Behind the Slate Pod. I'm posting content every day, talking about the films that we've been discussing, both with Chris Sieving and in the Van Peebles series. Okay, I think that's everything. Thank you for listening. And until next time, that's a wrap.